Nobody in the Imperial's dining room saw it coming. One moment, the evening was running its usual course. Silk dresses, whispering against leather chairs, the quiet negotiation of power deals over Wagyu and wine. The next, a $3,000 bottle of Bordeaux was painting Mikhail Orlov's suit a deep, damning red. Claire Dawson stood frozen, tray trembling in her hands, watching disaster bloom across expensive fabric. Her first thought wasn't about getting fired. It wasn't even about the cost of the wine. It was something deeper, something primal that bypassed 6 years of careful American assimilation and dragged up words from a place she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten it existed. Batyushka, prosti, gospodi, nekotel, starshi. The apology tumbled out in Pomorya, not Russian, not even close. And the dying language of Arctic fishermen and White Sea smugglers, thick with swallowed vowels and consonants that crashed like ice breaking. A dialect that should have been extinct for 20 years, certainly not alive in the mouth of a Manhattan waitress serving the city's elite. The reaction was immediate and absolute. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Silverware froze halfway to mouths. The kitchen sounds faded to nothing, as if even the building understood that something irreversible had just occurred. But it was Mikhail's face that destroyed her. The old man sat motionless, wine dripping forgotten onto white linen. His pale eyes locked on Claire with an expression that shifted from shock to something infinitely more dangerous. Recognition. Not the casual kind. The kind that calculates lineage and threat level in the same breath. The kind that asks which dead men taught you to speak like that, and why you're standing in his dining room pretending to be nobody. Otkuda, Tai? Devochka? His voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a blade. Where are you from, girl? He wasn't asking for a city name, he was asking which ghost she was. Claire's alarm went off at 6:47 every morning, 13 minutes earlier than necessary, because being early meant being invisible, and invisible meant safe. She'd shower in the cramped bathroom where the pipes screamed like dying animals, dress in clothes that were clean but forgettable, and leave her studio apartment without looking back at the 400 square feet that contained her entire life. No photographs on the walls. No plants that needed tending. Nothing that would require explanation or suggest permanence. The landlord thought her name was Clara Daniels, which wasn't technically illegal since she'd never signed anything under oath, just a lease. 6 years of Clara Daniels. 6 years of being nobody worth remembering. The coffee shop in Murray Hill knew her as the girl who never called in sick. Mondays through Wednesdays, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., she poured lattes and smiled at customers who looked through her like she was part of the espresso machine. Perfect. Thursday through Sunday belonged to the Imperial, where she arrived early and left late and collected tips from people who couldn't pick her out of a lineup 10 minutes after she'd served them. She'd arranged her life like a series of locks. 2 jobs meant 2 different personas, 2 sets of co-workers who'd never meet, 2 separate existences that never touched. No social media. She deleted everything the night she arrived in New York, sitting in a Port Authority bathroom stall with shaking hands and a dying phone. No close friends because friends asked questions and remembered answers. No boyfriend, no roommate, no regular bar where someone might notice if she stopped showing up. Is the other servers at the Imperial thought she was boring. Probably broke. Definitely hiding from an ex or immigration trouble or both. Angela had tried befriending her once, inviting her out for drinks after a double shift. Claire had manufactured a migraine and an early morning obligation, watching relief and mild pity cross Angela's face. After that, everyone left her alone, which was exactly what she needed. The Imperial catered to Manhattan's particular ecosystem of wealth and shadows. You learned fast which tables mattered and which ones required selective memory. The Goldman Sachs file P at table 4, the real estate developer at table 9 who definitely wasn't just in real estate, the fashion editor who showed up with a different barely legal model every week. You served them, smiled professionally, and forgot their faces the moment you cleared their plates, but some names you couldn't forget even if you wanted to. Orlov party, 8:30 tonight. Raymond had announced during the Thursday pre-shift, his voice carrying that specific frequency that meant pay attention or die. VIP protocol. Mikhail Orlov. Some of you know the name. Those who don't, here's what you need to know. Invisible service, perfect execution, zero personality. If he remembers you, you failed. Claire's stomach had dropped straight through the floor. She knew the name. Of course she knew the name. You didn't grow up where she grew up and not know about the Orlovs. They weren't just another crime family. They were the family that had buried everyone else who'd tried to compete. Mikhail was supposedly retired now, his son Leonid running things. Chew, but men like that never really retired. They just got better at hiding the bodies. Table 7 wasn't in her section, thank God. She could stay invisible for one more night. Except the universe had a sick sense of humor, and Sasha got food poisoning right before service, and suddenly Claire was holding a $3,000 bottle of wine and walking straight toward the one man in Manhattan who could recognize what she was trying so desperately to hide. The wine kept dripping. Mikhail made no move to wipe it away, just sat there watching Claire with those winter pale eyes while the entire dining room held its breath and waited to see if she'd survive the next 60 seconds. "I'm so sorry," she managed in English, her American accent back in place but shaky, unconvincing. "Let me get towels, The restaurant will of course cover your dry cleaning. I'm so incredibly... Sit." The word was quiet but absolute, not a request. Claire's legs obeyed before her brain caught up, folding her into the chair across from him. Wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Servers didn't sit with guests, but the man in the dark suit near the bar had moved closer, positioned where he could reach her in 3 steps, and she understood with perfect clarity that leaving wasn't an option. Mikhail dabbed at the wine with his napkin, unhurried, like they had all the time in the world. "You are from Moscow, yes? Your application said Moscow. A small town outside. Which town?" "Podolsk." The lie came smooth, practiced. "You wouldn't know it." "I know Podolsk." His Russian was cultured, Moscow proper, nothing like the thick coastal dialect she'd accidentally used. "My cousin owned a factory there in the 90s. Terrible place, very industrial. Not many fishermen in Podolsk, I think." Claire's throat closed. "No, My grandmother was from the north, on the coast. I learned some phrases from her, but... The north is big." He was still smiling, but there was nothing warm in it anymore. "White Sea, Barents, which coast, child?" Every answer was a trap. Too specific, and she'd confirm what he suspected. Too vague, and he'd know she was lying. She tried for helpless confusion. "I don't remember exactly. I was young when she died. She just called it home." Mikhail leaned back, studying her the way you'd study a painting you suspected was forged. "This grandmother. She taught you to apologize to your elders with Batiushka. Very respectful, old-fashioned. My own grandmother used this word. It's what she always said when she taught you about showing proper deference to starshi." The word rolled out with emphasis. Elder, but not just elder. The term carried weight, hierarchy, the specific codes of respect that existed in certain circles. This is not common Russian, what you spoke. This is something else. Claire's hands were shaking in her lap. She'd clasped them together to hide it. But Mikhail's eyes tracked the movement. "I think," he said slowly, almost gently, "your grandmother was a very interesting woman from a very interesting place, and I think you remember much more than you pretend." The man in the dark suit was directly behind her now. She could feel his presence like a wall cutting off escape. "Tell me," Mikhail said, and his voice was soft as a knife sliding between ribs. "What was your grandmother's family name?" Claire had her bag packed by 11 p.m. Everything she owned fit into one duffel and a backpack. 6 years in New York, and she could still disappear in under 20 minutes. She'd kept it that way on purpose, always ready, always prepared for the moment her careful invisibility shattered. Tonight was that moment. The conversation with Mikhail had ended with his business card pressed into her palm and a promise that they'd speak again soon. Not a threat, not exactly, but the weight of it sat in her chest like swallowed glass. She'd finished her shift on autopilot, ignoring Angela's concerned questions and Raymond's thin-lipped disappointment, and gone straight home to pack. Philadelphia first. Maybe Atlanta after that. Somewhere big enough to disappear, far enough that the Orlovs wouldn't bother following. She'd done it before. She could do it again. The Greyhound station at Port Authority smelled like piss and desperation at midnight. Claire kept her head down, baseball cap pulled low, duffel slung over her shoulder as she joined the line for the 12:40 a.m. departure. $47 for a one-way ticket. She'd paid cash, obviously. No credit cards, no trail, no... Ms. Dawson? She didn't turn, didn't react. There were 1,000 Dawsons in New York. Could be anyone. Claire Dawson. The voice was closer now, right behind her left shoulder. Male, accentless professional. Please don't make this difficult. Her hand tightened on the duffel strap. The line shuffled forward. 10 people between her and the ticket window. If she ran, where? The station was huge, crowded even at this hour, but these men would know every exit, every camera, every... Mr. Orloff would like to speak with you. Ice flooded her veins. She turned slowly. 2 men in dark suits, expensive ones that didn't quite hide the bulk of shoulder holsters. The one who'd spoken was maybe 40, dark hair, forgettable face. His partner was younger, blonde, watching her with the flat attention of someone trained to stop people from running. I don't know any Orloff, Claire said, and hated how weak it sounded. His father had an interesting dinner tonight. The dark-haired one smiled without warmth. You made quite an impression. He'd like to discuss it. Privately. I have a bus to catch. You don't. The blonde one had moved, casual and quick, positioning himself between Claire and the ticket windows. The bus can leave without you. Mr. Orloff can't. People were staring now, sensing trouble the way crowds always did. The dark-haired man's hand settled on her elbow, gentle but immovable. There's a car outside, he said quietly. You can walk, or we can carry you. Your choice, but you're coming either way. Claire's hand loosened on the duffel. She'd run out of choices the moment she'd opened her mouth. The drive north took 40 minutes through darkness that got thicker as Manhattan's lights faded behind them. Claire sat in the back of a black Mercedes that probably cost more than she'd earned in her entire life, watching trees replace buildings and realizing with sick certainty that if these men wanted her gone, no one would ever find the body out here. The gates appeared suddenly, wrought iron, 12 feet tall, flanked by stone pillars and cameras that tracked their approach. The compound beyond looked like something from a different century. Sprawling stone manor house, manicured grounds, enough land that the neighbors were probably half a mile away in either direction. Old money architecture with new money security. Floodlights, cameras, men in dark suits patrolling the perimeter with dogs. This wasn't a home, it was a fortress. They parked in a circular drive where the gravel probably cost more per square foot than her queen's apartment. The dark-haired man opened her door with that same cold courtesy, and Claire stepped out because what else was she going to do? Run screaming into the woods? Mikhail was waiting in the entrance hall. He'd changed out of his wine-stained suit into casual slacks and a cardigan that made him look like someone's kindly grandfather. The effect would have been more convincing if Claire couldn't see the guards stationed at every doorway, or the bulletproof glass in the windows, or the way Mikhail's eyes tracked her with the same sharp assessment as before. Dochenka, he said warmly, opening his arms like she was family. Little daughter. I am glad you came. Didn't have much choice, Claire managed. No, Mikhail agreed, in dropping the pretense with a small smile. But we can be civilized about it, yes? You must be tired. Hungry? We have... Father. The voice came from the staircase, and Claire's stomach dropped as a man descended with the measured pace of someone who never hurried because he never had to. Early 30s, dark hair precisely cut, wearing a suit that probably cost 5 figures even at this hour. Handsome in the way that sharp objects were handsome, all clean lines and dangerous edges. Leonid Orlov looked nothing like his father. Where Mikhail had weathered hands and kind eyes that hid calculation, Leonid was pure apex predator wrapped in Italian tailoring. He studied Claire the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen, taking in every detail, her cheap jacket, her worn sneakers, the way she was trying very hard not to shake. "So," he said, and his voice was winter itself, "you're the ghost who speaks the dead language." It wasn't a question. Claire didn't bother answering. Mikhail gestured toward an archway. "Come, we'll talk in the study. Civilly." Leonid's smile was a blade. "Of course, civilly." Claire followed them deeper into the fortress and wondered if she'd ever leave it alive. The study was all dark wood and leather, walls lined with books that probably cost more than Claire's entire life. Mikhail settled into an armchair by the fireplace. Leonid remained standing, which meant Claire had to keep looking up at him, a power play so obvious it would have been funny if she wasn't terrified. "Let's start simple," Leonid said, pulling out his phone and setting it on the desk between them. "Recording, of course." "Your real name?" "Claire Dawson." Before that, her throat closed. "That's the only name I've used in 6 years, 3 months. Leonid didn't even glance at his phone. He'd memorized it. "You entered the country on a student visa that expired 5 years ago. Before New York, you were in Boston for 7 months. Before Boston, nothing. You appear in American records like a ghost in 2019, fully formed. I know history." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "So I'll ask again. What was your name before you decided to become Claire Dawson?" The smell of the sea hit her suddenly, salt and fish and diesel fuel from the boats. Her grandmother's house, small and drafty, perched on rocks above water so cold it could kill you in minutes. Nets hanging to dry. Men with faces carved by wind. "Petrova," she whispered. "My grandmother's name was Petrova. First name, Katya." Something flickered across Leonid's face. Recognition. He exchanged a glance with Mikhail that Claire couldn't read, then turned back to her with renewed intensity. "Katya Petrova from where, exactly?" "A village, small. You wouldn't... Try me." The name felt like broken glass in her mouth. "Severny Bereg." The room went very still. Mikhail leaned forward in his chair, and when he spoke, his voice was different, older, harder. "Severny Bereg burned 8 years ago. The Pomorsky Bratva. Everyone died." "Not everyone," Claire said, and hated how small her voice sounded. Leonid was staring at her now like she'd just solved and created a problem simultaneously. "The Pomorsky network was dismantled completely. We made sure of it. There were no survivors." "You made sure?" The words tasted like ash. "Your family made sure." "It was a territorial dispute," Mikhail said, but there was something almost gentle in his tone now. "The Pomorsky Bratva was smuggling through routes we'd claimed. They refused to negotiate. It became necessary to burn an entire village?" Claire's hands were shaking. "Women, children, people who just fished and minded their own business?" Leonid's expression didn't change. "How old were you?" 16. "And you saw?" She closed her eyes. Smoke, screaming, hiding in her uncle's fishing boat while men with guns walked through flames. "Enough." "Names," Leonid said, and there was something urgent in his voice now. "The men who came. Did you see their faces?" Leonid moved to the bar cart and poured 3 glasses of something amber without asking if Claire wanted one. He set it in front of her, then took his own to the window, staring out at the manicured darkness of the grounds. "The Pomorsky Bratva controlled the northern routes for 60 years, he said finally. White Sea to Arkhangelsk, Arkhangelsk to Helsinki, Helsinki to everywhere else. Weapons, drugs, people, anything that needed moving through the Arctic, they moved it. My grandfather tried negotiating with them in the 80s. They laughed at him. Said the North belonged to the Pomors, always had, always would." Claire's fingers wrapped around the glass, but she didn't drink. She knew the story, had lived inside it, but she'd only ever heard one version. The version told by fishermen's wives in quiet voices, or the version that ended with everyone she loved dead or scattered. My father took over in '98, Leonid continued, nodding toward Mikhail. The Pomorsky network had expanded. They weren't just smuggling anymore, they were trafficking girls out of Murmansk, running protection rackets, poisoning the local government. They'd become what they'd always accused us of being. So you decided to wipe them out, Claire said flatly. We decided to negotiate. Mikhail's voice was tired. One more time, we sent envoys, offered them partnership, territory sharing, percentage cuts, generous terms. They killed our envoys, Leonid said. Sent them back in pieces. 3 men. One of them was my cousin. They nailed his hands to a fishing boat with a message carved into his chest. The sea doesn't negotiate. Claire remembered the tension that summer, in the way the men had started carrying guns openly. Her uncle arguing with her grandmother about leaving, about taking the family south before something happened. Her grandmother refusing. This was their home. Had been for generations. Nobody was chasing them off their own land. The Bratva leadership was based in Severny Bereg, Leonid said, and Claire's heart clenched. Your village. They'd turned it into a fortress, weapons caches, lookouts, the whole network running through those docks. We couldn't touch the smuggling operation without going through Severny Bereg. So you burned it. The words came out hollow. We targeted the leadership, Mikhail said quietly. 12 men. The inner circle. We had intelligence, names, locations. It was supposed to be surgical, in and out, minimal casualties. But, Claire's voice cracked. Leonid's jaw tightened. Someone tipped them off. They were waiting. It turned into a firefight. The weapons cache detonated. We didn't even know they were storing explosives in residential buildings. The fire spread faster than anyone could control. Claire closed her eyes and she was 16 again, watching her grandmother's house light up like a torch. Hearing the screams, the gunfire, her uncle shoving her into the fishing boat, telling her to stay down, to stay quiet, not to come out no matter what she heard. 43 dead, Leonid said. We counted, verified every body. 42, Claire whispered. You missed one. She opened her eyes and found them both staring at her. I hid in my uncle's boat for 6 hours, she continued, voice shaking. Listened to people die. Watched your men, or someone's men, walk through the village after. They were looking for survivors, checking bodies. I stayed under a tarp covered in fish guts until they left. Mikhail's face had gone gray. Child, don't. Claire stood abruptly, the chair scraping back. Don't call me that. You don't get to... Her breath caught. You killed everyone I loved and you call it business. A territorial dispute. It was war, Leonid said, but something had shifted in his expression. And wars have casualties. I was a casualty who survived, Claire said. So what happens now? You finished the job? The panic attack hit without warning. One moment Claire was standing, defiant, and the next her vision was tunneling and she couldn't breathe. The study disappeared and suddenly she was back in the boat, curled under the tarp, fish scale sticking to her face and the smell of burning wood and something worse choking the air. Someone was touching her shoulder. She jerked away violently, stumbling backward into the bookshelf. Easy! Mikhail's voice, distant. You are safe. You are here, not there. But she wasn't here. She was 16 and hiding and listening to Mrs. Volkov scream until the screaming stopped. She was watching through the gap in the hull as boots walked past. Heavy tactical boots, not the worn work boots of fishermen. Military grade, professional. Breathe, Leonid said. And when had he moved closer? In through your nose. Let's count to 4. She tried, failed, tried again. The study slowly came back into focus. Expensive books, fireplace, 2 men watching her with expressions she couldn't read. I saw them, she gasped. The men. After. Leonid went very still. After the fire? They came through, checking, looking for... Her breath hitched. One of them found my aunt. She was alive. Burned, but alive. He put a gun to her head and she couldn't finish. Didn't need to. How many men? Leonid's voice was sharp now, focused. I don't. 5, 6. They spoke Russian, but not local. Moscow accents, professional. They had radios, coordinated movements. The memories were coming faster now. Details she'd buried for 6 years, clawing their way up. One of them was in charge. The others called him something. A name or title I couldn't try. She closed her eyes, reaching for it. The word had been strange, out of place. Not a name, something else. Volk, they called him Volk. Wolf. Mikhail and Leonid exchanged a look that made Claire's stomach drop. What? She demanded. You know that name? Volk was our operation name, Leonid said slowly. The man leading our team that night. But he died in the weapons cache explosion. We recovered his body. Maybe you recovered the wrong body. Impossible. We verified. Then maybe someone else was using that call sign. Claire's hands were shaking again. Because I heard it. Multiple times. The men with Moscow accents who executed survivors, they were calling someone Volk. The room went quiet except for the crackling fire. There's more, Claire whispered, because the memories were flooding back now, unstoppable. I saw his face, the leader. Just for a second when he walked past the boat. I can't remember clearly, it's been too long and I was terrified, but I remember thinking... She swallowed hard. I remember thinking I'd seen him before, somewhere in the village, before that night. They kept her at the compound. Not as a prisoner, Mikhail insisted, though the guards outside her assigned bedroom and the locked gates suggested otherwise. Guest accommodations that felt like luxury detention, 4-poster bed, ensuite bathroom with heated floors, windows that didn't open more than 3 inches. Claire didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back in the boat, so she stayed awake, watching dawn break over grounds that probably had bodies buried somewhere beneath the perfect landscaping. Breakfast was served in a sunroom overlooking gardens that looked like they required a full-time staff. Mikhail was already there, reading a newspaper, playing the grandfather role again. Claire picked at eggs she couldn't taste while her mind kept circling back to that name. Volk. Wolf. And the face she couldn't quite remember. Leonid wants to speak with you again, Mikhail said over coffee. He's bringing some photographs, old operational files. Perhaps you'll recognize... The door opened and 3 men entered. Leonid first, carrying a leather folder. Behind him, 2 others. One she didn't recognize and one she did. The recognition hit like a physical blow. He was older now, graying at the temples, wearing an expensive suit instead of tactical gear. But the gesture, the way he tilted his head slightly when listening, the specific cadence of his walk, it unlocked something in Claire's memory with the force of a crowbar. This one's clear. Move to the next building. That voice, Moscow accent, calm, professional, standing in the firelight while her world burned. Claire, this is Viktor Kozlov, Leonid was saying, my senior advisor, and Dmitry Volkov, head of Claire. What's wrong? She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Victor was looking at her with polite interest, no recognition in his eyes, because why would there be? She'd been a terrified 16-year-old hiding in a boat. He'd been a man doing a job that included making sure there were no survivors. Her voice came out strangled. I need air! She stood too fast, chair scraping back, and had to grip the table to stay upright. Victor stepped forward instinctively, reaching out to steady her, and Claire flinched so violently she knocked her water glass over. Don't touch me. Everyone froze. Victor's hand was still extended, confusion crossing his face. Miss Dawson, are you... Get away from me! The words came out low, vicious. Get the fuck away from me! Leonid's eyes had gone sharp, tracking between Claire and Victor with sudden, terrible understanding. Claire, Do you know him? She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. He was there, that night in my village. Her eyes locked on Victor, who'd gone very, very still. You walked right past my hiding spot. You said, "This one's clear." You told someone named Sasha to check the docks. Victor's face drained of color. "And then," Claire continued, voice breaking, "you shot Mrs. Volkoff in the head." The gun appeared in Victor's hand so fast Claire almost missed it. One moment, he was standing there in his expensive suit, looking cornered. The next, he had a Glock pointed at Leonid's head and was backing toward the door with the calm efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "Nobody move," Victor said, and his voice was still that same professional monotone from 6 years ago. "Leonid, tell your father to put his hands on the table where I can see them." Mikhail complied slowly, face carved from stone. Dmitri had frozen mid-step, calculating odds. "You sold us out," Leonid said, and he didn't sound surprised. Didn't sound anything. "The Severny Bereg operation. You told the Pomorsky Bratva we were coming." "I told the Chechens," Victor corrected. "They told the Bratva, for a price. Same price they'd been paying me for 2 years to feed them your roots, your shipments, your weaknesses." He smiled without warmth. "The Pomorsky network was useful. You wanted them gone. The Chechens wanted them dependent. I served both masters and profited from the chaos." 43 people died, Claire said, and her voice was steady now, cold. "Because of you." 42, Victor said, glancing at her. "You were a surprise. I thought we'd cleared the boats." "You didn't check under the tarps. An oversight. One I can correct now." The gun swung toward her, and Claire's world narrowed to that black barrel and the absolute certainty that she was going to die in a sunroom in Westchester, 6 years and 3,000 miles from home. Then Dmitri moved. It happened in fragments, Dmitri lunging, Victor pivoting, the gun's report impossibly loud in the enclosed space. But Dmitri had been a soldier before he'd been an advisor, and Victor's shot went wide as they crashed into the sideboard. Crystal shattered. The gun skittered across hardwood. Leonid was already moving, crossing the room in 3 strides and pinning Victor to the floor with a knee to his spine. The efficiency was brutal, mechanical. This wasn't the first time he'd restrained a traitor. "Mikhail," Leonid said calmly, "call Alexei. Tell him to bring the soundproof room ready." Victor was laughing, blood on his teeth from where his face had hit the floor. "You think I'm the only one? There are others. The Chechens own half your organization, and you're too arrogant to see it." "Then you're going to give me names," Leonid said. "Eventually." They dragged Victor out. Dmitri and 2 guards who'd appeared from nowhere. The sunroom smelled like gunpowder and spilled coffee. Claire stood by the window, hands shaking, watching her nightmare disappear down a hallway. Mikhail poured vodka with steady hands and offered her a glass. This time she took it. "You knew," she said to Leonid when he returned, jacket off, rolling up his sleeves. "When I said his name, you knew he was dirty." "I suspected. You confirmed." He studied her with those winter eyes. "Your testimony puts Victor at Severny Bereg executing civilians. That's valuable. The Chechens will know we have it. We'll know we can prove their operation stretched back 8 years. It gives us leverage." "You're welcome," Claire said bitterly. "I'm offering you a choice." Leonid's voice was flat, businesslike. "Witness protection, new identity, new city. Government assistance. You disappear again, properly this time, and we never speak of this. Or you stay. You help us identify the others. Victor won't be the only Chechen asset, and you're the only surviving witness who can connect the dots. You work with us, we give you resources, protection, and answers. All the answers about what really happened that night." "And revenge?" Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. "If that's what you need." Claire looked out at the manicured grounds, at the fortress Mikhail had built to keep his family safe. She'd spent 6 years being no one, hiding from ghosts, surviving instead of living. She'd thought erasure was safety, thought invisibility was strength. But standing here, having just watched her nightmare get dragged away to face justice, she realized survival wasn't enough anymore. She'd spent 6 years running from her past. Maybe it was time to stop running and start hunting. My real name, she said quietly, is Katya Nikolaevna Petrova. My grandmother was Katya Ivanovna Petrova. She taught me to speak Pomorya and gut fish and respect my elders, and she died because someone decided her home was worth less than a smuggling route. She turned to face Leonid fully, shoulders back, chin up. I'm not running anymore. I'm staying, and I'm going to help you find every single person who was there that night. Her voice hardened. And then we're going to make sure they understand exactly what they took from me. Mikhail raised his vodka glass in a small salute. To Katya Petrova, may she find what she's looking for. Leonid's smile was sharp as broken glass. Welcome to the family business. Katya, not Claire, never Claire again, drained her vodka and felt something click into place. She wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't nobody. She was a ghost that had learned to haunt back, and she had 6 years of rage to work through. The North remembered its dead, and now, finally, so did she.